My own mother looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't loved enough to be at my sister's wedding. Those words cut deeper than any knife. But they also ignited a fire within me that ultimately led to the most satisfying revenge imaginable. I'm Madison, and 2 years ago, when I was 28, my sister Brooke's wedding became the stage for a dramatic showdown years in the making. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being the family scapegoat, and how everyone involved finally reaped what they had sown. To truly understand, we have to go back to the beginning. Growing up, I was always the odd one out. My parents, Scott and Linda, made it painstakingly clear that Brooke, 2 years my junior, was their golden child. She was blonde, bubbly, everything they'd ever dreamed of. I was the quiet, bookish one, preferring the solace of a good story to any social gathering, and I chose a practical career in accounting over anything they considered exciting. The favoritism wasn't just subtle. It was a roaring billboard. Brooke wanted dance lessons? They paid for the most expensive studio in town. I asked for art supplies? Suddenly, we needed to be careful with money. Brooke got a brand new car for her 16th birthday. I got a job at the local grocery store and saved every penny for a beat-up used Honda. Family photos were a cruel joke, always positioning Brooke front and center, while I was an afterthought, relegated to the edges or sometimes just conveniently cropped out of their cherished Christmas cards. But the real sting always came from my Aunt Kelly, my mom's sister. She lived an hour away but visited frequently, always showering Brooke with gifts and effusive attention. She'd coo, "Oh, Brooke, you're just glowing today," then turn to me with a strained, almost pitying smile, muttering a half-hearted, "Hi, Madison." I felt invisible, a ghost in my own home. Despite this relentless emotional neglect, I desperately tried to maintain connections. I called regularly, never missed a birthday, showed up to every family gathering with a forced smile. I clung to the hope that if I just tried harder, if I was more successful, more likable, things would finally change. And honestly, I did become successful. After college, I landed an amazing job at a prestigious accounting firm. I clawed my way up, earned my CPA, and by 26 I was making more money than anyone else in my family. I bought a beautiful townhouse, traveled regularly, built a life that was genuinely my own, and one I was fiercely proud of. Brooke, meanwhile, floated between part-time jobs and community college classes, never quite finding her footing. She was charming, yes, and undeniably social, but she lived in a studio apartment my parents largely subsidized, driving the same high school car now held together with prayers and duct tape. None of my achievements, none of my stability, ever shifted the family dynamic. If anything, my success seemed to fuel their resentment. At family dinners, the snide comments would fly. "Madison's too busy for family," or "She probably thinks she's better than us now." When I'd offer to help with family expenses or emergencies, they'd scoff, treating my generosity like a thinly veiled attempt at showing off. Then, in the spring of 2022, Brooke got engaged to Hunter. He seemed like a decent guy, worked in construction, and clearly adored her. Despite everything, I genuinely felt happy for them. Love is love, right? The engagement announcement came via a family group text that, of course, I wasn't included in. I found out, predictably, when Brooke posted it on Facebook. I immediately called her, genuinely happy to congratulate her, and she actually seemed pleased to hear from me. We talked for almost an hour about wedding plans, and she mentioned an October 2022 date. "I'd love to help with planning," I offered, my heart hopeful. "I know some great vendors, and I'd be happy to contribute financially." Brooke's reply was warm. "Oh, that's so sweet of you, Madison. I'll definitely let you know." Weeks bled into months. Crickets. Nothing about wedding plans. When I tried to bring it up during our sporadic phone calls, Brooke would skillfully change the subject or give frustratingly vague answers. A knot of unease began to twist in my stomach, but I tried to rationalize it away. Maybe they were just taking their time. Summer arrived, then faded. Through casual family chatter, I heard the wedding was definitely happening in October. Still, no specifics reached me. No date, no venue, not a whisper about dress shopping or bridal showers. I told myself it must be a small, intimate affair, and they just hadn't gotten around to telling everyone the details yet. A flimsy excuse even to my own ears. Then, in early September, my blood ran cold. Scrolling through Facebook, I saw a post from my cousin Michelle, Aunt Kelly's daughter. It was a photo of her holding a beautiful cream-colored invitation, elegant script shimmering. The caption read, "So excited for Brooke and Hunter's wedding next month. Can't wait to celebrate with the family." My stomach dropped like a stone. I screenshotted the post, staring at it, the words blurring. This wasn't some last-minute, intimate gathering. This was a proper wedding with expensive, embossed invitations, gold foil details, sent out weeks ago. And I, the sister, had received nothing. I immediately called Brooke. My voice was tight. "Hey Brooke, it's Madison. I just saw Michelle's post about your wedding invitation. I think mine might have gotten lost in the mail." A long pregnant pause stretched between us. "Oh, Madison," she stammered. "I was going to call you about that." "Call me about what?" The knot in my stomach tightened into a painful vice. "Well, we're having a really small wedding. Like super intimate. Just immediate family and our closest friends." My breath hitched. "Brooke, I am immediate family. I'm your sister." Another agonizing pause. "I know, but it's complicated. Hunter's family is huge, and we had to make some really tough decisions about the guest list." Felt like a physical blow. A punch to the gut. "So, you're saying I'm not invited to your wedding?" "It's not personal, Madison. We just couldn't invite everyone we wanted to." But even as the words left her mouth, I heard the lie in her tone. This was absolutely unequivocally personal. The next few days were a blur of hurt and confusion. I replayed every conversation, dissecting every interaction, desperately trying to pinpoint what I could have possibly done wrong. Had I offended someone? Been too pushy about helping? I couldn't make sense of it. Finally, I called my parents, hoping foolishly they might mediate or at least offer some explanation. "Hi, Mom. It's Madison. I need to talk to you about Brooke's wedding." "Oh, honey. What about it?" Her voice was saccharine, but I could feel the ice beneath it. "I didn't get an invitation. Brooke says it's because they're keeping it small. But I saw that Michelle got one, and she's not immediate family." Another pause, then my mother's voice, devoid of all warmth, turned razor sharp. "Madison, I think you need to understand something. This wedding is for the people Brooke and Hunter actually love and want to celebrate with." I was stunned. What is that supposed to mean? It means that some people earn their place at family celebrations, and others don't. Brooke has every right to invite the people who matter to her. "I'm her sister," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "Being related to someone doesn't automatically make you important to them, dear. This event is only for the people we actually love." The wind was knocked right out of me. My own mother. "Mom, how can you say that to me?" "I'm just being honest. You've always been so focused on your career and your own life. You can't expect to be prioritized when you've never prioritized this family." Before I could even formulate a response, I heard my father's voice in the background. He must have taken the phone because suddenly he was talking. "Madison, your mother's right. Some people just don't belong at family celebrations. You've made your choices about what matters to you, and now Brooke's making hers." Tears streamed down my face. "Dad, I've never done anything to hurt Brooke or anyone in this family. I've always been there for you guys. Being there and being wanted are two different things, Madison. Maybe it's time you accepted that." They hung up. On me. I sat in my kitchen sobbing, the cruel words echoing in my ears. My own parents had just told me in no uncertain terms that I wasn't loved, I wasn't wanted by my family. All those years of trying to prove myself, of achieving success, of showing up and being supportive, it had all meant absolutely nothing to them. But the worst, I soon learned, was yet to come. A few days later, I ran into Aunt Kelly at the grocery store. I was still raw from the conversation with my parents, but a desperate part of me thought maybe she would be more understanding. "Hi, Aunt Kelly," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Oh, hi, Madison. I guess you heard about Brooke's wedding situation." She sighed, an overly dramatic sound. "Look, Madison, I don't want to get in the middle of family drama, but I think you should know that real family only means real family. Brooke wants to be surrounded by people who've been there for her, who she has close relationships with. I have been there for her. I'm her sister. Are you, though? Really? When's the last time you called her just to chat? Not because you wanted something or to show off about your job. When's the last time you made an effort to be part of this family instead of just around it?" I stared at her dumbfounded. "I call all the time. I show up to every family event. I've offered to help pay for things. Money isn't everything, Madison. Brooke needs emotional support, not financial support. She needs family who care about her as a person, not people who think they can buy their way into her good graces. I walked away from that conversation feeling even more devastated. Was I truly as absent and cold as they were making me out to be? I went home and scrolled through my phone. I had called Brooke 2 weeks earlier to ask about wedding planning. I texted her funny memes regularly. I'd been to every family barbecue, birthday party, and holiday gathering for the past 5 years. But maybe that simply wasn't enough for them. Maybe I started to believe I really was the problem. I decided to try one last time. I called Brooke directly, my voice laced with a raw vulnerability. Brooke, can we please talk about this? I feel like there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Madison, there's no misunderstanding. I've thought about this a lot and honestly I'm kind of relieved you won't be there. Her words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean? I mean that finally, I can have a wedding without the family disappointment hovering around. You always make everything about you, Madison. Every family event becomes about your job, or your house, or your travels. I just want one day that's about me and Hunter without having to worry about you, making everyone uncomfortable. I make people uncomfortable? I whispered, utterly shocked. You don't even realize it, do you? You walk into family gatherings like you're better than all of us. You talk about your fancy job and your expensive trips, and then you act confused when people don't want to hear it. This wedding is supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and I don't want it ruined by your presence. She hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling utterly shattered. According to my family, I was selfish, cold, absent, a show-off, and generally just an unpleasant person to be around. For a brief, horrible moment, I wondered if they were right. Maybe I truly was the problem. But then something shifted inside me. A tiny defiant spark. I started thinking about all the times I'd bitten my tongue when they made little digs. All the times I'd smiled and nodded when they dismissed my achievements or poked fun at my interests. All the times I'd offered help, only to be made to feel condescending. I thought about how Brooke had never once asked about my life in any meaningful way. How my parents had never visited my house, despite my regular visits to theirs. How Aunt Kelly had never remembered my birthday, but never forgot Brooke's. And with a sickening clarity, I realized something profoundly important. I hadn't been the problem. I'd been the scapegoat. They'd spent years making me feel like I was never good enough, never caring enough, never family enough. And I'd internalized it so deeply that I was ready to believe being excluded from my own sister's wedding was somehow my fault. But it wasn't. So I made a decision. If they didn't want me at the wedding, fine. I wouldn't be there. But I also wouldn't be available for anything else they might need from me. I booked a trip to Italy for the week of Brooke's wedding. I'd always dreamed of seeing Tuscany, and I figured this was the perfect time to reclaim some joy. I didn't tell anyone in my family about the trip. I just quietly made my plans, looking forward to spending a week in a beautiful place, far away from people who so clearly didn't value me. The week before my departure, some interesting whispers reached me through the grapevine. My friend Jessica, who worked at the same bank as Hunter, casually mentioned some talk about financial difficulties with the wedding. I probably shouldn't tell you this, she said over coffee, but Hunter told his coworker they're really struggling to pay for everything. Apparently, the venue requires a final payment they can't cover, and both families are strapped for cash. A little twist of something, not quite satisfaction but certainly intense interest, stirred in my stomach. That's too bad, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Yeah, I guess Brooke's been pretty stressed about it. Hunter's working overtime, but it's not enough. I heard they might have to cancel if they can't come up with the money soon. I filed this information away, a quiet hum of expectation starting in my chest, and continued with my plans. By the way, if you're still with me on this wild ride, and you're feeling a spark of recognition for this kind of family drama, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss the rest of this story. And there are many more like it to come. 2 days before I was supposed to leave for Italy, my phone started ringing. It was my mother. Madison, honey, I need to talk to you about something important. The sudden syrupy sweetness in her voice was jarring, a stark contrast to our last conversation. What's that, Mom? I asked, a dangerous calm settling over me. Well, it's about Brooke's wedding. They're having some financial difficulties, and I was wondering if you might be willing to help out. You know, as a family member. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. I paused, letting the silence hang heavy. I thought I wasn't really family, Mom. At least not the kind that gets invited to weddings. Oh, honey, you know we didn't mean it like that. We were just trying to respect Brooke's wishes for a small ceremony. Her small ceremony that includes Michelle, and apparently half the town, but not her own sister? My voice was firm, unwavering. Madison, please. Brooke is really struggling right now. The venue is threatening to cancel everything if they don't pay the remaining balance by tomorrow. It's $15,000. I know that's significant, but it would mean the world to Brooke. I almost laughed out loud. $15,000 was significant even for me. It was more than some people made in several months. But the sheer audacity of calling me up to ask for that kind of money, after telling me I wasn't loved or wanted, was breathtaking. Have you asked Michelle? Or Aunt Kelly? Or any of the other real family members who are invited? Madison, please don't be petty about this. Brooke needs help. I'm not being petty, Mom. I'm just wondering why the family disappointment, who doesn't belong at family celebrations, is suddenly the first person you call when you need money. Fine. If you're going to be like this, I'll call your father. She hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. My dad. Madison, your mother told me about your conversation. I think you're misunderstanding the situation. What am I misunderstanding, Dad? My voice was flat. Look, I know things got a little heated when we talked about the wedding before, but this is about helping your sister in a time of need. Some people just don't belong at family celebrations, right? But that doesn't mean I can't help family when they're struggling. I repeated his words back to him, savoring the bitterness. So, I don't belong at celebrations, but I do belong when you need money? Madison, don't twist my words. We're asking because we know you care about Brooke, regardless of whatever issues you two might have. If Brooke cared about me, she would have invited me to her wedding. If you cared about me, you wouldn't have told me I wasn't loved by this family. So no, Dad. I'm not going to help pay for a wedding I'm not invited to. You're really going to let your sister's wedding be ruined over a petty grudge? His voice was dripping with condemnation. I'm not ruining anything. I'm just not fixing problems that aren't mine to fix. He hung up too. An hour later, Brooke called. Her voice was thick with tears. Madison, please. I know we haven't been getting along lately, but I really need your help. For a moment, hearing the genuine distress in her voice, a flicker of my old self, the one who always tried to help, almost caved. Despite everything, she was still my little sister. But the anger, the years of hurt hardened my resolve. Brooke, I would have helped you with anything if you had just treated me like family. But you made it very clear that I'm not welcome in your life. I never said you weren't welcome in my life, she cried. You said you were relieved I wouldn't be at your wedding because I'm the family disappointment, who makes everyone uncomfortable. I was upset when I said that. I didn't mean it. Which part didn't you mean, Brooke? The part where you called me a disappointment? Or the part where you said I make everyone uncomfortable? Madison, please. I'm begging you. If we can't pay this, we'll lose everything. The deposits, the venue, everything. Please don't let my wedding be ruined because of a fight. Brooke, I said, my voice steady. You ruined your own wedding when you decided to exclude me. You chose to make me feel unwanted and unloved, and now you're facing the consequences of your choices. But you have the money. You could fix this so easily. Her voice was desperate, accusing. I could, but I won't. I hope you figure something out, Brooke. I really do. But it won't be with my help. I hung up, my finger hovering over the power button for a moment. Then I turned off my phone completely. I had a flight to catch. Italy was everything I'd hoped it would be and more. I spent a week wandering through ancient cities, savoring incredible food, and sleeping in a beautiful villa nestled in the Tuscan countryside. I posted photos on social media, making sure they were public. I wanted anyone who looked to see exactly where I was, and how much I was enjoying myself. On what would have been Brooke's wedding day, I was touring the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. I took a selfie in front of Botticelli's Birth of Venus, with a huge, genuine smile on my face. The caption read, "Sometimes the best celebrations are the ones where you're surrounded by beauty instead of negativity." Hashtag living my best life. Hashtag solo travel. Hashtag nor egrets. When I turned my phone back on after returning home, the screen exploded. 47 missed calls. 129 text messages. The wedding had been canceled. Apparently, none of the other real family members had been able to come up with the money. Aunt Kelly had claimed she was between paychecks. Michelle was saving for her own house. Various other relatives had offered thoughts and prayers, but no actual financial assistance. The venue had canceled everything when payment wasn't received. The catering, the flowers, all gone. The photographer demanded payment for the engagement photos before releasing them. Brooke and Hunter had lost all their deposits and were now thousands of dollars in debt, with absolutely nothing to show for it. The messages started with feigned apologies and quickly devolved into anger. From Mom. Madison, please call me. We need to talk about this wedding situation. Brooke is devastated. From Dad. I can't believe you would let your sister's wedding be canceled over money. Call me back. From Brooke. Madison, the wedding is canceled. I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. From Aunt Kelly. I heard about what you did to Brooke. This is a new low even for you. And then as the messages continued, the tone shifted again predictably. From Mom. Madison, honey, I know we said some things we didn't mean. Can we please talk about maybe rescheduling the wedding? We could all chip in this time. From Dad. Madison, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Of course, your family. We were just stressed about the wedding planning. Can you please call us? From Brooke. Madison, I'm sorry about what I said before. I was just overwhelmed with wedding planning. Could we please talk about doing a smaller ceremony that you could help with? From Aunt Kelly. Madison, I think we all got a little carried away with the wedding drama. Real family means working through problems together. Can you please call Brooke? But the most telling message came from Michelle, the cousin who'd proudly displayed her invitation. Hey Madison. I heard about Brooke's wedding getting canceled. That's really too bad. By the way, I don't suppose you'd be willing to help me with a down payment on my house? Family helping family, right? Let me know. I almost threw my phone across the room. They had learned absolutely nothing. Even after everything, they still saw me as nothing more than a bank account with a family obligation attached. They weren't sorry for how they treated me. They were only sorry that their treatment had financial consequences. What truly got to me was the sheer audacity of it all. Here I was, the person they'd spent months telling wasn't really family, wasn't loved, wasn't wanted at their precious celebration. The person they called a disappointment, who made everyone uncomfortable. And yet, the moment they needed money, suddenly I was family again. Suddenly I mattered. I started thinking about all the other times this pattern had played out over the years. When my dad's car broke down 3 years ago, guess who got the call? When Brooke needed help with her security deposit for her apartment, who did they suggest she ask? When Aunt Kelly's roof started leaking and she needed emergency repairs, somehow my name came up as someone who might be willing to help family. But when it came to the good times, the celebrations, the moments that actually mattered, I was conveniently forgotten. I wasn't invited to my parents' anniversary party because it was just a small thing. I found out about my cousin's graduation party through social media. When Aunt Kelly threw her big birthday bash last year, somehow my invitation got lost in the mail. The pattern was crystal clear. I was useful when they needed something, invisible when they didn't. I remembered a conversation with my therapist a few months earlier. Dr. Johnson had been helping me work through some of my family issues, and she'd said something that stuck with me. Madison, healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and genuine affection. If someone only values you for what you can provide for them, that's not a relationship. That's a transaction. At the time, I'd pushed back against that assessment. But they're my family. I'd argued. Family is supposed to be there for each other, right? Family is supposed to love and support each other unconditionally, she'd replied. But it sounds like their support for you comes with a lot of conditions, while their expectations of your support come with none. Looking at my phone, full of desperate messages, her words rang truer than ever. Where was their unconditional support when I needed it? Where was their love when I was hurting from being excluded? Where was their understanding when I tried to explain how their treatment made me feel? It was nowhere to be found because their love had always been conditional. conditional on my compliance, my usefulness, my willingness to accept whatever scraps of attention they were willing to give me. I started scrolling through the messages more carefully, analyzing the language. Even in their attempts to reconcile, they were still manipulating me. My mother's messages were laced with guilt trips. Brooke is devastated. How could you let this happen? Your sister needs you. My father's messages were accusatory. I can't believe you would do this. This is a new low. You're being selfish. Not a single one of them had actually apologized for what they'd said to me. Not one had acknowledged that telling me I wasn't loved or wanted was cruel and wrong. They were all focused on the consequences of their actions, not the actions themselves. Brooke's messages were perhaps the most telling. Even in her desperation, she couldn't bring herself to take responsibility. I hope you're happy, she'd written. You got what you wanted. As if I had somehow orchestrated this entire situation instead of simply refusing to fix the mess she'd created. What I'd wanted was to be treated like a valued member of my family. What I'd wanted was to be invited to my sister's wedding. What I'd wanted was for the people who raised me to love me unconditionally, the way parents are supposed to love their children. But apparently what I'd actually wanted, according to Brooke, was for her wedding to be cancelled. Because in their minds, my refusal to enable their behavior was the same as actively sabotaging them. I thought about the psychology behind their reaction. They'd created a narrative where I was the villain, the selfish sister who had ruined everything out of spite. It was easier for them to paint me as the bad guy than to examine their own behavior and admit they'd been wrong. This wasn't about the money, not really. $15,000 was painful, but it wasn't impossible for them to come up with if they truly tried. They could have asked Hunter's family for more help. They could have scaled back the wedding even further. They could have postponed it and saved more money. But instead, they'd immediately turn to me because they'd grown accustomed to the idea that I would always be there to solve their problems. They'd taken my generosity for granted for so long that they genuinely couldn't understand why I would suddenly stop providing it. The entitlement was staggering. They'd spent months making it clear that I wasn't welcome in their lives. And then they'd expected me to hand over thousands of dollars to make their lives better. They told me I didn't belong at family celebrations, and then they'd been shocked when I didn't want to pay for one. I realized that this moment was a turning point, not just for Brooke's wedding, but for my entire relationship with my family. For years, I'd been trapped in a relentless cycle of trying to earn their love and acceptance. I'd succeeded professionally, been generous with my time and money, shown up for every event, and tried to be the perfect daughter and sister. But nothing I did was ever enough because the problem wasn't with my behavior. It was with their values. They didn't value me as a person, they valued me as a resource. And now that I'd stopped being a resource they could count on, they were panicking. All their attempts to reach out, all their messages trying to guilt me into helping, were just different versions of the same manipulation they'd always used. I decided to respond to each of them, but only once. To my mother I wrote, "Hi Mom, I got your messages. I want to be clear about something. When you told me that this wedding was only for people you actually love, I believed you. When you said I wasn't really family, I accepted that. I'm not interested in pretending those conversations didn't happen just because you need money now. I hope Brooke and Hunter can figure out their financial situation, but it won't be with my help." To my father, "Dad, there's no misunderstanding. You told me that some people don't belong at family celebrations, and that being related doesn't make someone important. I agree. I don't belong at your celebrations, and apparently, I'm not important to you. But that also means your problems aren't important to me. I hope you understand." To Brooke, "Brooke, I'm sorry your wedding was canceled, but I'm not sorry for my decision. You told me that you were relieved I wouldn't be there because I'm the family disappointment. You said you didn't want me ruining your special day with my presence. Well, now you don't have to worry about me ruining anything ever again. I won't be at your wedding, your future children's birthdays, your anniversary parties, or any other family events. You got what you wanted." To Aunt Kelly, "Aunt Kelly, you're right that real family means real family. Thank you for teaching me that I was never considered real family by any of you. It's been very educational." And to Michelle, "Hi Michelle. Thanks for reaching out. Unfortunately, I only help real family with financial matters, and I've recently learned that I don't qualify as real family. Best of luck with your house hunting." After sending those messages with a profound sense of liberation, I changed my phone number and blocked all of their social media accounts. I also set my own social media to private and removed anyone who might serve as a conduit for information back to them. I was done. But the story doesn't end there. Over the next few months, I heard through mutual friends and acquaintances what had happened to everyone. Brooke and Hunter had tried to plan a smaller, cheaper wedding, but they were so far in debt from the canceled wedding that they couldn't afford even a modest ceremony. Hunter had to take a second job to pay off their debts, and Brooke had to move back in with our parents because she couldn't afford her studio apartment anymore. My parents, who had always lived paycheck to paycheck despite putting on airs of middle-class stability, were struggling with the additional expense of supporting Brooke again. My dad had to postpone his retirement, and my mom had to take on extra shifts at her part-time job. Aunt Kelly had been counting on Brooke's wedding as a major social event where she could show off and network. With it canceled, she'd lost face in her social circle and had apparently become something of a laughingstock among her friends. Meanwhile, Michelle had indeed been unable to afford the house she wanted and had to settle for a much smaller place in a less desirable area. But the real kicker came about 6 months later. I was at a work conference in the city when I ran into Tom, an old family friend who had known us all since we were kids. He recognized me, a genuine smile on his face, and came over to say hello. "Madison, I haven't seen you in ages. How are you doing?" "I'm doing really well, Tom. How are you?" "Good, good. Hey, I heard about all the drama with Brooke's wedding. That was really unfortunate." "Yeah, it was a difficult situation," I said cautiously. Tom looked around, then leaned in closer, dropping his voice conspiratorially. "Can I tell you something? I never said this to your parents, but I was really surprised when I heard you weren't invited to the wedding." "Oh." My heart started to pound a little faster. "Yeah. I mean, I've known your family for 20 years, and you've always been the responsible one. The one who had her life together. Brooke's sweet, but she's always been a bit flighty. And your parents have always seemed to take you for granted." He hesitated, then continued, "I actually heard that the original plan was for Brooke to have a smaller wedding party, but then your mom and Aunt Kelly got involved in the planning and convinced her to expand everything, except when it came to including you. They apparently said something about wanting Brooke to have her moment without any distractions." My stomach dropped again, but this time it wasn't from hurt, but from a gut-wrenching mix of vindication and profound sadness. "What do you mean?" I choked out. "Well, you know how proud your parents are of Brooke, but let's be honest, she's never really accomplished much. Meanwhile, you've got this great career, your own house, you travel all over the world. I think they were worried that having you in the wedding party would make Brooke look bad by comparison. So they convinced her not to invite me at all." "That's what I heard," Tom confirmed, his voice gentle. "Your mom apparently said it would be better for Brooke's self-esteem if the wedding was just about her, and not about comparing her to her successful sister." There it was. The ugly truth laid bare. I'd been right. This was about so much more than guest list limitations. My own family had deliberately excluded me because my success made them uncomfortable. My success, something I had worked tirelessly for, was a threat to their fragile narrative. "Tom," I asked, my voice barely a whisper, "do you think I'm cold or difficult to be around?" He looked genuinely surprised. "Are you kidding? Madison, you're one of the warmest people I know. You always remember to ask about people's kids. You're generous with your time and resources, and you're incredibly loyal to the people you care about. Why would you even ask that?" "Just something someone said to me once." "Well, whoever said that doesn't know you very well," he stated firmly. That conversation confirmed what I'd started to suspect the moment I booked that flight to Italy. My family's treatment of me had never been about my behavior. It had been about their own insecurities and jealousies. A year later, I heard that Brooke and Hunter had finally managed to have a small courthouse wedding, with just their parents present. No reception, no party, just a quick ceremony followed by dinner at a chain restaurant. Around the same time, I got engaged to my amazing boyfriend, David, whom I'd been dating for 3 years. David was a lawyer, kind and funny, and completely supportive of my decision to cut contact with my biological family. When he proposed, I didn't call my parents or Brooke or Aunt Kelly. I called my best friend from college, my mentor from work, and my cousin from my dad's side of the family, who had never been close to my parents anyway. We planned a beautiful destination wedding in Costa Rica, with 30 of our closest friends and chosen family members. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of. Intimate, meaningful, and surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported us. Since I'd cut all contact, I only shared photos in our private group chat and on my private social media accounts that they couldn't access. But word travels fast, even in small communities, and I knew eventually they'd hear about it through mutual acquaintances. Sure enough, about a week after we returned from our honeymoon, Tom and other mutual acquaintances reached out. My biological family had found out about the wedding and were furious about not being invited or even informed. Tom told me they'd been asking around for my new contact information, trying to get people to pass along messages. But I'd been careful to only share my new number with people I truly trusted, and I'd asked them specifically not to share it with my family. The messages never reached me directly, but the sentiment was clear. They were hurt and angry that I'd gotten married without including them. The irony was completely lost on them. I'd learned that authentic family isn't about blood relations. It's about people who love you, support you, and treat you with respect. My wedding was full of authentic family, just not the people who shared my DNA. 2 years later, I'm happier than I've ever been. David and I bought a bigger house with a beautiful garden where we host dinner parties for our friends. I got another promotion at work and now oversee a team of 12 people. We travel regularly and are planning to start trying for kids next year. I occasionally hear updates about my biological family through mutual acquaintances. Brooke and Hunter are still struggling financially and living with my parents. Brooke never went back to school and is working part-time at a retail store. My parents are still working past retirement age and have apparently become quite bitter about their financial situation. Aunt Kelly's social standing never recovered from the wedding debacle, and she's become something of a cautionary tale in her social circle about the importance of maintaining family relationships. Sometimes I feel a pang of sadness about how things turned out. There are moments when I miss the idea of having a close family, of having sisters and parents and aunts who love and support each other unconditionally. But then I remember how they made me feel for so many years. I remember being told I wasn't loved, that I didn't belong, that I was a disappointment. I remember being excluded from the most important day of my sister's life, because my presence was considered a negative. And I remember that I tried for years to earn their love and acceptance, and it was never enough. The only thing that ever mattered to them about me was my ability to solve their problems with my money. I've built a new family now, made up of people who chose to love me, and whom I chose to love in return. David's family welcomed me with open arms from the very beginning. My friends celebrate my successes instead of resenting them. My coworkers respect my abilities instead of feeling threatened by them. I learned that you can't force people to value you and you shouldn't have to. Real love and real family don't come with conditions and requirements. They don't disappear when you set boundaries or expect to be treated with basic respect. My biological family chose to exclude me when they thought they didn't need me, and then expected me to come running when they realized they did. But by then it was too late. I'd learned my worth, and I'd found people who recognized it from the very beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at people who hurt you. Sometimes it's just living well without them and refusing to let them back in when they finally realize what they've lost. I'm living my best life now, surrounded by real family. The kind that actually loves and values me. And honestly, I wouldn't change a single thing. I'm so curious to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose yourself over a toxic family dynamic? What did you do and how did it turn out? Let me know your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I read every single one.